Why is classroom management such a struggle? That seems to be the age-old question, especially because we get a lot of training on classroom management and there's a lot of ideas out there. So in this video, we are going to push aside all those ideas and really focus on one key thing that's going to help your classroom management. And it's going to make a huge impact on the way that you and your students interact every day and how you handle challenging behaviors. If you're new to my channel, I'm April Smith. I'm an upper elementary teacher and I have dealt with a lot of different behaviors. And so this is actually a topic near and dear to my heart because I am a teacher who has worked with a lot of struggling students in lots of different situations, but I'm also a mother who has two kids who are very, very different and handle things very differently. I am a parent of a child who gets very anxious when they're in trouble or they feel like there's any negativity directed towards them, and those can be the hardest students to work with because they shut down really easily. So that is why I am here talking about this, and I promise you that this is a video you're not going to forget. So how do we build a relationship with our students and how do we use that to properly manage our classroom? Well, I'm going to show you, I'm actually going to give this to you as a free download, so wait till the end of the video so I can give you the directions on how to do that. But I'm going to tell you 9 ways that you can simply build relationships with your students. What you can do once you have that relationship and you have that trust is you can easily redirect students. You can discuss behaviors in private. You can connect with them better, which will help any classroom management strategy that you decide to use. The first way to develop a relationship with your students is to hold morning meetings. Holding morning meetings are not time wasters. They're not for announcements, although you could use that as part of it, but they're there for you to have a discussion with your students. Maybe you're sharing a little bit about yourself and what happened the day before. That is a really good trust builder. Or maybe your students are sharing something that happened to them. When we start to see students not getting along, especially in 4th and 5th grade, when things start to get very dramatic out at recess time, morning meeting is a really great way to sit down and not name names, but just kind of talk about what do we do when our friends are mean to us? What do we do if we see someone bullying someone? What do we do in these situations that are happening as we are having a lot of drama at recess time? So these allow for us to share more about ourselves and also discuss tough topics with our students, which is an important part of our classroom community. Number 2 is to be transparent and genuine. You need to be able to relate to your students and they need to be able to relate to you. So we don't need to trick them with any fancy classroom management strategies. We just need to be genuine. Show that we care about them, even if the behavior is very frustrating to us. And just making sure that they understand that we're here to support them and support the other students. And that is why we have the rules that we have. It's also really important to share with students what your struggles were. I think one of the reasons why I relate so much to students who have behavioral issues is because I've been there as well. I was very anxious when I would get in trouble or if I felt like I wasn't doing something perfectly. And so sometimes I would be very difficult. And knowing that I had some really great teachers who knew how to reach me is what really helped me become a good teacher. And then also knowing that there were a couple teachers that were just not caring or compassionate, and they really didn't make that effort. They just thought I was being naughty and they wanted to find some way to punish me so I wouldn't do it again. That really drove my classroom management strategy and the way that I treated students as well. And so I think that background information and knowing what you struggle with in school, the challenges that you had are really important to share with students. The third thing is to just acknowledge every student every day. So you have students coming in and you're really busy trying to get things ready, but it's really important to greet every student, not only to let them know that you're here and you care, but to get a sense of how the morning's gonna go. You can tell when students walk in if they've had a rough night or a rough morning. You can absolutely tell by looking them in the eye. So look every student in the eye, greet them so that you can prepare yourself for what might happen later in the day if you have a few students who are having a rough time. And that leads into number 4, which is to ask students questions. We really do focus a lot on academics, where we should be also focusing on the students' interests and also what's happening with them in the classroom, at home, and just what they're really into. So this information from asking students questions can help us create lessons that are more engaging, can help us reach them when they're having a tough time, and it can help us connect both ways. Number 5 is really directly related to negative behaviors. So when you have students who are really not doing what they're supposed to be doing and it's disruptive to the class, redirect them and then talk to them after privately to share why you redirected them. And sometimes we find ourselves in situations where a simple redirection doesn't work. So we need to have a plan, maybe something like sending them on an errand to another teacher so that they can get a break, but also feel useful and not feel like they're in trouble. So instead of sending them to a buddy room to go sit against a wall, sending them to deliver something to the teacher and then having them come back fresh. And then we can direct them towards, okay, here is what you were doing. Let's continue on a better note. So definitely important to have some sort of strategy there and have ways to redirect students. Strategy number 6 is to build in encouragement. And this doesn't have to necessarily be just between you and the student, but it can be between the students in your class. So having some sort of system where students are constantly encouraging each other, you are encouraging the students, whether it's just by saying something simple like, wow, you did an awesome job on this, I'm so proud, or leaving them a special note that says, great job, or calling home to give a positive report. I'll never forget the first time I actually called home to give a positive report. The parent was like, ugh, what this time? And I was like, no, I'm calling you to tell you a positive thing. I know your student's been struggling, but today we had a really good time in math and they really focused and we really made a breakthrough. And she was so thankful to get a call like that, but the initial response was, ugh, what's going on? What did my child do? We do not want that. Although there is a time and place for us to be communicating with parents so that they can help us with challenging behaviors, we also need to communicate with them when the child is doing really good things. So if they're having a success in something, then we need to communicate that to the student and to the parent. Strategy number 7 is small groups, and I absolutely love small groups because it's a way for me to connect with students. And these can be small groups inside the classroom where we're working on a skill, and they can also be small groups where I'm having students help me before school, after school with the students who stay late for tutoring, or during lunchtime. Now, I don't like to give up my lunchtime, so that's not usually my style, but when I do have things that I need students to help me with, I find that it's helpful to not just always ask the students who are being really well behaved or successful in my class, but to bring in the students that have the skills that could really help me and help them make them feel better about themselves, being very useful and helping me with that particular task. Number 8 is to integrate their interests. So if you have talked to your students, you've asked questions, and you know what they're interested in, this can really help you design lessons that are around topics that they're really engaged in. So a lot of times students will be disruptive or spacey because they're not really into what you're teaching. And it's a little frustrating because then we know it's an us problem. But in reality, we need to be finding ways that we can relate the standards that we're teaching to what they're interested in and what's going on in their lives. So that's why I really love project-based learning, because I get really great engagement during project-based learning and I have very minimal behavioral issues, because instead of me just teaching them practicing and then repeat, we're really engaging in me teaching and then practicing in relation to an actual real life scenario that they're interested in. So focus on building those relationships and building that trust with your students so that you can use the information that you gain to plan some engaging lessons. And you can use any curriculum that you have and you can kind of tweak it to be around their interests. You could choose different passages, you can choose different books, you can make things a fun math game. There's a lot of ways that you can do this. And the last strategy that you can use to build trust and relationships with your students is to actually bring them in on the discipline process. I'm not really saying there's going to be a discipline process for every type of misbehavior, but when they do disrupt class or have a behavior that's not optimal, you can allow them to converse with you and decide, okay, what would be a fitting punishment or way that we can make up for this behavior, and how are we going to help keep this behavior from happening in the future. So having that conversation, having students be a part of the decision-making process when they're trying to atone for their behavior is really helpful. On the flip side, you can use that to have students help you choose rewards. So if students are really motivated by rewards and they're really struggling with a certain behavior, you can have them tell you like, hey, this is the thing I would really like to do if I show the behavior that you want me to show. So let's say we have a really good week this week. We've met all of these behavioral goals that we're working on. One thing I would really like to do is I would like to stay at lunchtime and help you with this one task that I'm really interested in, or I would like to play more video games at home, and then you can connect with their parents to set that up. Find the rewards that your students are really interested in. Not every student's going to be interested in Class Dojo or stickers or prizes or anything like that. So finding ways that you can communicate with students to find a way to reward them when they're working towards their behavioral goals is really helpful. There are some students that truly have emotional or behavioral needs that are just outside of the scope of a regular classroom teacher. And in that situation, these relationship building tips are very helpful still, but you definitely want to get the help of your special education department, your administration, to try to make sure that this student has the tools that they need to succeed. But seriously, building relationships is the best way to have better behavior in your class, to have your classroom management systems really work. So a lot of times our classroom management systems fail because we haven't built these relationships, we don't have the buy-in from our students, and we don't have the trust that we need. So work hard on building these relationships. If you want a reminder of the 9 ways that you can very simply and easily build relationships in your classroom, go to the link in the description. We've made a completely free download for you. You can access it, bring it into your class, and think of some ways that you can incorporate this into the way that you work with students and the way that your classroom runs. I hope that this was really helpful for you. Again, classroom management is so important for me as a parent and as a teacher, because I think it makes a huge difference not only in the teacher's experience, but the student's experience with you in the classroom.